if you practice enough, they'll pop up with you like that on the day of the exam. You know what I mean? It's just about you practicing the different strategies so that you're able to utilize them more proficiently.
Correct. So then, what I did next was look at the verbs, right, of the answer choices.
Absolutely.
Answer choice A, providing, we see requiring for option B, C, having, D, providing. So these are all good positive verbs.
Right. They are all right. They're all positive. None of them are overtly negative.
Positive. Okay. So then now I'm going to go ahead and read the question A. It says providing instruction on text-based academic vocabulary prior to reading.
Right.
So I really like that one. Basically, it mentions the text-based prior to reading vocabulary.
Right.
So that I underlined that one because it is something that you do with ELLs and beginning. You know, you have to, prior to their reading, you have to have their, give them vocabulary instruction. Okay,
so but answer. You want to read the answer choices just as critically as you do the scenario. So if your scenario says they're beginning, would it be beneficial for them to just be in groups with other ELLs supporting them?
Can you repeat that again?
So based on the fact that we're wanting to assist ELLs at the beginning level of their proficiency with reading, right? Content specific material, which is challenging in it of itself, then add that they're beginners. Would it be most appropriate for them to be in groups with other ELLs who do not have the full command of the language? Would that be the best way to support them?
Yes. Well,
okay, well let's
you have to have a partner that
you absolutely have to have someone.
So then you have to, and then that way you can work with groups if you have another student that knows both of the languages.
Exactly. Well, let's look at the other one because we're going to talk about these because this is important.
Okay, B, requiring students to develop outlines of the text in English while reading. So this is, again, beginning level proficiency.
Right.
Wanting for students to develop outline. Text.
Right, so we have providing instruction on text-based academic vocabulary prior to doing the reading. Or requiring students to develop outlines of text in English while reading. So as you go through these, I would like for you to tell me, utilize verbal metacognition. Metacognition, remember, is what the state wants for all of us to be at, all of our students to be able to achieve. And that's, they are thinking and they're thinking about their thinking. That's all metacognition is. So as you go through these answer choices, I'd like for you to sort of do your metacognition aloud, which usually you do to yourself in your brain. So I can see what your idea is as far, because remember, we have identified that they're ELLs. They're at that beginning level of proficiency with their reading content specific material. So in that particular scenario, how can we best achieve the goal for the teacher to provide that most appropriate assistance for them in order to be able to understand that content material? So just think aloud is what metacognition is silently in your head when you're thinking about your thinking, which is what we have to train our students to do. We have to train them to think about, like, well, why did I do this? And what did I understand? Like, write something that I connected to, write something that possibly confused me off to the side, because you reflect on something that you did, instead of sort of like mindlessly going through it and not stopping and picking apart little pieces. If you are a just self-learner, you do all that yourself. You do it possibly to, like if you're like me, then you do it probably to like an unhealthy level where I'm like, did I do this right? Did I understand it? How can I know better? But I would like for you, as you're going through these, to sort of tell me what you were thinking. Like, okay, well, I chose this one because of these words in the answer choice.
So do you want me to tell you what choice I selected for that one, for number one?
Yeah, just go through and tell me which ones you didn't. Start with the ones you did not choose, the ones you eliminated, because I would like for you to be able to articulate. Yeah, I want for you to be able to articulate why that wasn't a good answer for you.
Okay, well, I eliminated B, requiring students to develop outlines of the text in English while reading.
That was excellent. Please tell me why. But why did you do that? What's the why is what is important?
Well, it's the beginning level of proficiency, and it's the content-specific material.
Right.
So I just don't see why you have to require students to develop the outline.
Right. And if you'll notice, that is the of the 4 verbs that you have, that is the one that is the most negative or whatever as far as connotation. But asking a beginning level student to read and then develop an outline based on what they read. First of all, they wouldn't even be able to read for fun, like Sam I Am business, and create an outline because they're at the beginning level. Not to say that they're not brilliant, they probably are, but they aren't on that level. And certainly we would not ask them to do this because it would be out of their abilities at the moment, because we have not provided that instruction for them. So they have to be instructed on how to develop an outline. That's a whole other thing, not even having to do with second language acquisition. So imagine throwing both of those things out there to a beginning student. No, we would never do that. So you're absolutely right. B is a preposterous answer, and I would bet $5 that is not the right answer.
Yes. And then I went ahead and I eliminated C, having students read content material aloud in groups with other ELLs.
Yes.
Because this is the beginning level.
Right.
And reading aloud, read content material aloud with other EOLs.
Right.
You
so
have to have another child that has a native language and.
Exactly. So if this were to be a thing that we would do in groups, there would have to be a partner for the beginner that speaks their native language, whatever it may be, Mandarin, and also is a fluent English speaker as that like buddy system. But we really wouldn't even do that. Content specific material in a group with other ELLs, having them read it out loud, they won't even ask for clarification or use the restroom. Like, many of them are very afraid in the beginning, and certainly we would not ask them to read content specific material aloud with only other ELLs who also don't have a command of the language. Is really setting everybody up for failure. It's going to be too much stress for those that are at the intermediate and high levels. Advanced high probably in the other classes, or they might be there, and those are they're exactly comparable to native English speakers. I mean, so many of my advanced high students were just brilliant writers. I was like, man, they had just their vocabulary, their proficiency was great. So yeah, we wouldn't do that, because not only are we going to be putting the beginning student that is in the scenario in a stressful situation, the other ones are not going to be able to do as much with their activity if they're having to sort of like support beginner students themselves. And content specific material is me, an expository text, maybe if I'm a science teacher, about the rain cycle, or mitosis. So you wouldn't have them reading about mitosis in a group aloud with other people of varying language proficiencies. It would be certainly not the most appropriate if you're going to be assisting ELLs in your classroom. So that is another like gold star for you, and you did it for just the right reasons. Okay, now we have it between the dreaded two, right?
Yes. So then for D, I eliminated D. Providing students with parallel text. So that's I boxed in parallel text in English and their native language. So basically, with parallel text, let's say if you have a copy of a book, you have to have the copy in English and in their native language, whichever that might be. So this is, yet again, you have to look at the scenario. This is the beginning level of proficiency and the reading content-specific material. So I decided to eliminate that one.
D, good, that's excellent. D is also, so the if you'll notice, looking at the verbs again, you have providing, requiring, having, providing. The two that are the best answers of the four, you are providing something. You are supporting this. You're not having them do something else by themselves or requiring them to do this stuff. Like, you are providing this or creating this in order to, so those are definitely, as far as if you're looking at the verbs, better. And they are both appropriate. They are both appropriate. I had ELO students all through my high school classes, and I often provided them parallel texts because some of them came in as beginners with our readings, like Romeo and Juliet. Like, we invested as a department because we knew we needed those things in order for our students to be successful. So we would, take a bit of our budget and provide those texts in, but that's not the most appropriate. What is most appropriate, what science says, is that you have to teach that text-based academic vocabulary prior to even beginning the reading, because you want them to have a basis, a framework. And that means that you have, in order to have provided this instruction on that academic vocabulary, that means that you planned for something. You went and you found ways to connect that particular student. Maybe they came from, we had students from, Uganda, like 7 years ago, and I don't know anything. I have to go and learn those things, and then I have to find ways to connect the material, that content specific material, to ideas that they would find familiar, because that prior knowledge is the lasso between the new knowledge and the old knowledge, and then there's the neural pathway, and that's how we get all those connections to be able to retrieve information. And if we don't provide that, it's going to be very difficult for them to get any sort of understanding, even if you provide a parallel text in English and their native language. If you have not explained the concepts behind those words, even if they're translated, there's not going to be any proficiency or understanding with that. But let's take a look. Don't believe me. Let's take a look at what the state says. You did excellent, by the way. Just want for you to know. Some people get that wrong because they get, well, mostly it's if you haven't worked with ELLs that you probably got it wrong. Maybe. Okay, so providing instruction on content-specific vocabulary. So with our ELLs, it's so important. Vocabulary is so important. It's directly tied to our ability to speak. So they're trying to gain as much vocabulary, and also all of the content stuff. They have an extremely difficult task at the same time, in a very short amount of time, with not everybody on board with what needs to be done. But I digress. You have to not only provide instruction on, let's say, what the textbook says, but you remember I told you when we were discussing the standards that if you build that relationship and you listen to your students, then you know what words they might have difficulty with. So let's say you're a science, teacher. That science textbook is going to define 10 vocabulary words for that, whatever that chapter is. If you only teach them those 10 words, you are doing a disservice to your ELLs, first and foremost. But you're also doing a disservice to your native English speakers, because not just in Texas, but children as a whole have a very low oral language proficiency or language proficiency. And that means that they don't know a whole bunch of words, even like normal words that are not, just what we think. Obviously, the textbook makers thought that they didn't have to highlight and explain things. And so explaining things like processes, words that you think, based on your knowledge of your students, where they're at right now, they might also have difficulty. It might impede on their comprehension. So it behooves you to do just a little bit of extra work so that they understand it better. Because you might have gone over or given that direct instruction over what the textbook makers. But I guarantee you the textbook makers don't have students from the Valley and don't know what types of things they might need. Or, students from Uvalde. So it's nuanced, and we're the ones that make it nuanced. Like, everything is standard, and we're the ones that have to make sure that we provide them every support. And vocabulary for ELLs is key. We have got to give them every opportunity to be instructed, not just on content specific, but everything. And also opportunities to speak with their peers, with the cafeteria lady, with janitor, with the principal. And I don't know why schools don't implement it all the time, but I usually try to talk to people. Like in junior high, I would, whatever lunch period they have, go talk to the ladies and tell them, when my class comes through here, talk to them, ask them how was your day, blah, blah, blah. And I would tell them, you have to, I wanted for them to be kind and have conversations. That helps them. It strengthens their ability to be advocates for themselves, and it gives them practice, because they practice speaking with people who use other words that they may or may not understand. So it's extremely important for our ELL students that within our planning, within our instructional planning, that we provide millions of opportunities for them to have these authentic, organic speech opportunities, because they have to practice speaking, listening, and utilizing that new vocabulary. And if they're quiet and they don't speak, and you just, maybe they just speak with you, and then their math teacher doesn't really care about talking to them. It's just like if they turn their stuff in. No. Everybody has to be on board. Everybody has to be math, science, PE, lunch ladies, janitors, utilizing language. And I think that sort of off topic, is an underutilized value on campuses are those paraprofessional positions that can be someone who does speak their native language and English perfectly. And just have them, hey, check on them twice a week, once a week, have a conversation, have practice with them. Because that, along with direct instruction and vocabulary, is going to help them get from beginner to intermediate to where they can actually do things by themselves and get a little bit of confidence in their cognition without as many, linguistic, I don't want to say accommodation, but linguistic accommodations, without as much linguistic support. And that's important to them, because all of those kids that come in, they're not dumb. They just don't know English, which doesn't mean that they're dumb. I find that my students that come from Mexico, or what I'm calling right now, really brilliant. It's just a barrier of language. And so once they get a hold of that language, man, they just run with the content. So it's extremely, extremely, extremely important. Option B is incorrect, because we already know why. So all of those, it's for the exact reasons that you said, for the exact reason. But on the day of the text, you're not going to have so long. So you're going to have to go through these a little bit quickly, right? And be confident in yourself, which is why I like for you. Okay, I'll go right now and get you something. Sorry, my daughter came to come and ask for something. She's like, I am thirsty. So let's go back to 2. I wish you could write on this. I do wish you could write on this and show me like you're thinking, but it's okay. So this is a really good one too, because this is important, and especially so during Corona, because let's have you read this and then we'll see. I'll be right back. Are you ready? You know what the goal is and you know what the keywords are?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear them.
Yes. Okay, so the keywords, well, do you want me to read the scenario or just point out the keywords?
Either whichever you prefer. I usually go through it again because if you miss something, you might catch it this time.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go ahead and read the scenario. So number 2, a school district has implemented a bring your own device, BYOD policy, which allows students to use their internet-capable personal devices in class with teacher permission. Teachers are planning to have students use the devices for end-of-chapter quizzes. Which of the following is the most appropriate way for the teachers to ensure that students who do not own personal devices can participate?
Okay. So, what is the goal? Let's come at it from the goal perspective. What is the pedagogical goal of the instructor?
And the teacher goal will be student participation. In this scenario, they use the word again, most appropriate. So I went ahead and I boxed that word in.
Right. Because that means they gave you more. They gave you more than one appropriate. They say most appropriate, best approach. Best strategy. It's because they gave you an okay strategy, maybe a good strategy, and then like the best one for the scenario based on the words that they used. So it's very good that you always think of that as like a caution sign. And you need to remind yourself, okay, there's like going to be a couple of good answer choices here. I need to be careful with my analysis. Okay, so, and then?
So then most appropriate way to ensure students' participation, right? So then, of course, the policy for the BYOD.
Mm-hmm.
So she wants for teachers to use their device.
Translate in Swedish language.
So the teacher wants to ensure that students who do not own personal devices can participate. Now, I went ahead and I eliminated A. Well, before eliminating, I went ahead and looked at the verbs. So
looking at the verbs. Excellent.
Providing, asking, telling.
Right.
Okay, so we have pretty good verbs.
Right, we do.
And I went, and I eliminated A.
Some are less supportive, though, right? There's like, it's a shades of gray, but some of them are, they're not overtly negative, but definitely some of the verbs are more in a more supportive fashion.
And then in the scenario, the school district is implementing internet-capable, the technology,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then that's why I eliminated A, because it's asking for requiring students to answer the quizzes on paper,
Right.
and then to submit the paper.
Okay, so why did you eliminate A? What's the why behind that?
Why would you have to have students answer the quizzes on paper?
Yes, exactly. Claro. Like, you are deviating from the plan, which please do not ever do. The teacher's plan is to do something on personal devices. So why would you require them to do it on paper? It's just, no. That is not addressing, because if you'll look, you have the BYOD, so they need to be able to participate on the internet in the most appropriate way, right? So if they can't participate on the internet, that's one of the big key words, right? Participate in the internet, like utilizing these devices. That one doesn't address it, so it cannot be the answer. I could bet myself $5, be absolutely certain that is not correct.
Yes, that's not correct. And then I eliminated asking students to share their devices with students who do not own a device. Now, this is a perfect world, exam.
Right.
So you don't. Students do not have to be borrowing each other's.
Exactly. That's exactly the right answer. That, and also you never want to have them because it's liability. You can't say share with your friend and then their friend breaks their iPad. You know what I mean? And they're like, Miss Alceta Durham said that I had to share. No. But the better answer was your answer, which is, this is Utopia ISD. And theoretically, every single district in the state of Texas should be able to provide a device if they are utilizing technology in order to, to provide instruction, to provide assessment. They have to be able to provide that. We must do it, or else we can't do those things with everyone, because we're not going to deviate from the plan, and we're certainly not going to penalize those that don't have access to that. So it is the responsibility of the, districts to provide that. Excellent.
Okay. So then I only have B and D as left. I decided to eliminate D as well, because it is telling students about activities in advance and requiring them to borrow or rent a device. Okay. So then it goes back to the scenario. They want to allow students to use the devices in class with
Right.
teacher permission.
Right.
So why you have to? Okay, well, you do have to inform, about the activity and whatnot. Why would you have them require?
That is the word, requiring them. You cannot require them to borrow or rent a device. You cannot require a student to rent something in order to be able to get content, to participate in content instruction. It's illegal. And the same goes for even novels. We can't just say, oh, we'll figure it out on your own. No. If we're going to provide instruction and we're going to give assessments, then we need to be able to provide those tools that they need in order to be successful. Because the state demands that we do. So that is great that you did that. That requiring is that negative word that's like, you cannot require them, because it's, you can, we're not going to get into it because it might get confusing, but if you'll notice that telling students is less supportive than providing, you know what I mean? It's again, that providing word. I'm providing the support. I'm doing this in order to enhance the students' success. So I'm assuming that you chose B.
Yes.
Excellent. So that's exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to figure out, do we have a lab that is available on those days? Do we have a cow? Do we have iPads available? We find these loaner devices from the school inventory, which, they have millions of them just there in Utopia ISD. And then easy peasy lemon squeezy, everybody has a device.
Right.
That's the way it should work.
Okay.
I'm trying to press the answer, the rationale business. I think I have to make it. Okay, here it is. So you are correct. B is correct because it provides each student with that opportunity to participate, and this is important, this next part, in the activity using a basic device fulfilling the original purpose of the activity. You can't change the teacher plan of instruction in the answer choice. No. It has to be the same original purpose. So she wanted for them to utilize technology. You can't just say, oh, just do it on paper, and that's the best way to handle a shortage in technology. And informal assessment and student engagement. So, and then you're free to read the rest of it, but I already know which one. Already know which 1-3 is also. Did you take a look at the right answers after you went through them?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I just took these out, and then that's it. I didn't want to look.
Well, you're doing fantastic, and your rationale behind it, Yes, and
that's what I need to learn how to decode as well the answer choices, not just the scenario.
Yes.
So,
Because sometimes just one word change within the answer choice makes the answer completely wrong. And I think there's a couple of examples like this in this one, and I know for sure there's a couple in the other questions that I provided you with, where just one word and everybody overlooks it because you read fast. Everybody's under stress taking this crazy critical reading exam, in 5 hours, that they overlook it. The state knows you're going to do that. And so just really making sure that you ask yourself, especially if you have difficulty identifying between those two best options, look at the answer choices critically and say, what here doesn't align with my keywords and the goal of the educator in the scenario?
Okay, number 3. A social studies teacher is planning a unit for National Hispanic Heritage Month.
Right.
Which of the following activities will best engage kinesthetic learners? Okay, so what is the keywords I highlighted, or I just boxed?
Okay.
Best engage kinesthetic learners and activities.
Right. So best engage means they possibly have some stuff in there that might engage them, right? But best based on the stuff they gave you there.
Yeah. So then, what is the question asking? So which of the following activities engages kinesthetic learners? And the teacher's goal, the engagement of kinesthetic learners. Now I noticed as well. I looked at the verbs and Bloom's taxonomy verbs.
Mm-hmm.
So
They are.
I went. Yes. So I A, observing, B, creating,
Mm-hmm.
D, identifying, D, comparing.
Mm-hmm.
So creating with. Now I saw the verbs, the Bloom's taxonomy verbs, so
Right.
I went ahead and observing would fall under the comprehension.
Right.
I wrote it on the side.
Right.
Okay.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. What you're doing right now is metacognition. You were thinking about your thinking, and that's absolutely right. So they're just observing. They're not actually, they're thinking about it. They're not doing anything.
Anything, yes. And that's it needs kinesthetic learners.
It cannot be the right answer unless they're doing something. There has to be kinesthetic within the answer choice, or else it can't be the right answer choice.
They need to touch, movement, and motion.
Exactly.
Right? So then, either way, I didn't want to just select an answer, right? So
Right.
I looked at the verbs that Bloom's taxonomy. I identified those. So observing was fell under comprehension. Then B, creating, which falls under evaluation, and which is create. C, identifying, which falls under the knowledge level.
Uh-huh.
And D, pairing, which falls under the comprehension level.
Mm-hmm.
So I went ahead and I eliminated A because it's observing.
Right.
Kinesthetic learners.
Absolutely.
They don't.
They're not moving. They're just thinking or watching it on TV or whatever.
Exactly. Comparing. I scratched that one out. I eliminated
Yeah,
it.
they're comparing. They might, I don't know, be talking about it or just thinking about it. It's very not even clear, but what is clear is that they're not moving.
And identifying important geographical features. They're not moving. They're not doing anything. So I selected B because they're creating masks.
Yeah, they might have to get up to get paper, and they're using scissors and glue, and so yes, they would be using that kinesthetics. They would be using movement in order to do this activity. And so obviously, if we want to engage a kinesthetic learner, we have to do something that has movement. We cannot just have them sitting there and just thinking. It will drive them crazy, and they probably won't flourish. They might survive, but they're not going to flourish in your classroom because they learn in a different way, which is why it's such a difficult job for us to do well. Because every student is different. Every kid learns differently, and sometimes they learn differently on a different day based on what went on at home. And so it's very nuanced. It's very important. And I thank you for entering this profession. I know it's not like, people don't hail it like they should or like give us all the accolades, the affirmation. Teachers are amazing. I try to like tell all my teacher friends all the time, like, you are so awesome. But they just are.
And that's because also they use the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy. So
Absolutely.
that goes also for B, which they're also doing that.
Right.
Other than kinesthetic learning.
Right.
Okay.
So creating is the highest level. That means that you evaluated something, you analyzed its different parts, and then you created something whole new. You synthesized something new from what you knew and what you learned, which is the top of Bloom's taxonomy.
Correct. Okay, so for number 4, Which of the following teacher actions will best promote parents as partners in their child's education?
Right. This one's kind of tricky.
Keyword, best promote, teacher action, parents as partners, and child's education. I underlined, I boxed those keywords.
Okay.
What is the question asking? Teacher action to promote parents as partners in education, and the teacher's goal is promoting parents as partners.
What does that mean, parents as partners? Because those are just words, but like, what does that mean?
Well, they have teachers have to team up with parents. Parents know they can facilitate information as well to the teacher.
Absolutely, because they have information I don't have. They can tell me, you know what? And I would do it because it matters what's going on at home in order whether or not they're going to be successful. And so having them to be able to say, you know, like he wasn't feeling well this morning, blah, 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 getting that information and having that be something that we would use during instruction, you know, okay, maybe I'm not going to push him because I know his parents got into a huge divorce and his dad left. And so I'm not going to mess with it. But you won't know that if the parents are not partners. So they need to trust that you are sharing with them ideas, and you need to know that they are, like, you know, sort of digesting their student progress too, so that you guys can monitor it.
So then I went ahead and looked at the verbs, of course. So having, contacting, sending, encouraging.
Okay.
Now, I went ahead and I eliminated sending home with each child a copy of the school's policy on family involvement.
Okay, yes. So why did you tell me the why behind that? So they want to promote parents as like your sidekick. And is the best way sending home that policy?
They're just sending the policy to their family.
Yeah, school's policy will include like their, you know, dress code, all sorts of stuff. It's not, I mean, there might be a couple of pages on family involvement, but it's not going to be the same. And that's not the teacher explaining. The teacher actions that best promote like a partnership. Yeah, and that one is not it because the teacher is not engaging at all through email, text, or in person in any way, shape, or form with the parent as a partner. So that cannot be the answer.
Yes, so I eliminated that one. I eliminated B as well, contacting parents with good news about their child as needed.
Yeah. They should be doing that always. I mean, you should always, but not just for good things. You know, you should contact for good things. And parents adore it. As someone who has, you know, millions of kids, I know that whenever somebody just takes the time to say, oh, they did this well, or I saw them do this and it was very kind, it just is so meaningful. And that, I mean, it does help build, but it's not going to best promote that parent partnership.
So then the next one I eliminated D, encouraging parents to have high aspirations for their child's learning. Yes, that's a positive word, encouraging.
Exactly. It's the most out of all of them. You have having, contacting, sending. Encouraging is like the most, you know, sound like the best option if I'm just looking as far as verbs are concerned.
Yes, but how are you promoting? How is the teacher how is that? Yes, it's encouraging, but that's very inspirational for adults learning.
And while that's good, and you certainly might do that,
Not the best.
right. Parents need a little bit more information than just, hey, tell them, you know, encourage them to do well. You need to know how they're doing so that you can tell them, can I help you? Or you're doing really well. They need to know what is the status in order to be our partner. Think about it. Any relationship, they have to know what the other person knows in order for it to, like, you're married, you have to know what your husband knows, right? Or else it's not going to work. You don't know where the bank is, you don't know what's going on, then you're going to it's not going to work too well. You have to share information because the goal is the success of the student, and both of you have valuable information. Together, we utilize it to make the student successful.
Correct. So I selected A, having the parents sign their child's progress report so they can monitor the child's learning. So not only the teacher is able to monitor the child's learning, but that would be a good opportunity or a good way for the parent to monitor as well.
Right, and come ask questions. So if I see, and it's easier now because we have technology, I would get notification like right away, and it would be like, oh, because you could set it even to have a threshold with each assignment. Like if they get below a B, it'll notify you. So, I mean, you don't have to be like me and annoying about that, but they can monitor it, and that way when he gets home, right when he gets home, I'm like, excuse me, I just saw that you got a 75 on your science report, like the lab report. I can address it there, have a discussion with him, see if I can support him, and if it's something that is out of my hands that I can't control, then I call my partner in the classroom. And then likewise, and this is where some teachers really just shoot themselves in the foot, is not communicating that your success as a teacher literally hangs on their child's success. So like, I want for every single person that comes through my doors to be a success. If they aren't successful, I'm not successful either. That's how I measure it in my brain. So I am the biggest advocate for them. And so while I might not always come with, depending on the scenario, like the most positive information, because sometimes you have to come to them with bad news instead of good news. Like I didn't get that project and the 6 weeks is already over, and they did end up failing. So being in constant contact with the parents, having that paper I showed you where they were is really important, because you can talk to them and say, I sent the progress report and then I called you to let you know that he had a 75, because I would be very upset if my child were failing and I didn't learn of it until there was nothing that I could do. So you're absolutely right. Again, you've gotten none wrong. And we'll move on to number 5, which is sort of like an easy but extremely important concept for us to go over.
Yes. So number 5, which of the following is the most appropriate first step to take if a teacher is concerned that a student is suffering from abuse?
Right, so the abuse question. What is the law? What do we do? Who can we talk to? What needs to be done every single time? And why do we do it? So that's it. What did you think?
Yes, I mean, just by looking at the verbs, calling, reporting, sharing, asking. To me, well, I thought this one was easy. So basically, you have to report.
Yes, it's the law. If you don't, you'll lose your license. And so the state says you have 48 hours. Do not wait 48 hours if you suspect a child is being abused. And I know so many of my past interns, we've had like whole conversations about it, like where they feel bad and they know, and I'm like, do not feel bad. Your responsibility is to the child. If those bruises are easily explained, then the parent will easily explain it and it's no harm done. But we are the only other people that engage with these kids who have zero power in their homes. So we have to be vigilant. And we have to be an outcry. If they tell you something, if you see something, do not be worried that you are wrong. Be worried that you didn't notice it fast enough, And then if you're wrong, awesome, cool, sorry. But don't have a conversation, because you call a parent in and say, "Oh, I saw some bruises." They're gonna say, "Well, she fell, blah blah blah." Maybe she did, but maybe she didn't. And then she goes home, and they're home with the parent and they have nobody. And so it's nothing to play around with. It's also nothing to be ashamed of. You are doing your due diligence. You're abiding by the laws, and you're protecting your students first. It's not your job to make their parents feel comfortable. The first job is to keep the students safe. So if you think it's, you know your judgment, then you say something. You absolutely call, you report your suspicions. They will send somebody there to talk to them. If it is in fact, a valid concern, then the child won't go back to that abusive place, and you literally saved someone. But if it's not, they figure it out, and everything is fine. So,
well, now with this this one, I know on this one I thought it was, to me, I thought it was quite easy on that one. But then I remember there was a scenario on this, kind of on the same, a little bit similar, but I thought it was a little bit challenging.
Yes.
Because I think the teacher was, she suspected.
Okay, yeah.
That there
no,
was,
if you suspect, no, you don't have to know for certain. We're not detectives. Like, you don't have to know for certain. The point is that you suspected. If you get an inclination that one of your entrusted babies is being abused, you report it. You have 48 hours to do so. It is my personal opinion that you should do it immediately and not wait 48 hours. But yeah, even, and that word probably threw people off. Suspected, no, that's the point, is that I don't know it, I can't prove it, but those people are going to go look into it for me because I don't know. I can't say no for sure, and therefore I must report it.
Mm-hmm. And what would happen, for example, if let's suppose that reporting wasn't an option here on this scenario? What about if the teacher just suspected? And what would be the best thing for the teacher to do? Either would she tell the principal about it? Would she just monitor the student?
No, if you suspect it, you must make that phone call. If they tell you, I'm scared.
What if reporting is not an option on the answer choice?
What other option might they give you? Like, can you try to remember, like reporting, like contacting your local child agency might be an answer. It's yeah.
It was no. They didn't mention those on the answer choices. I think they just mentioned either tell the principal, monitor the student, because they were doing an activity, a small group activity. So then the teacher suspected that she saw something on the arm, but she wasn't sure.
Oh, she wasn't sure. Oh, okay, so if she just kind of saw something, then yes, you would monitor and try to look closely. But as soon as you get like a good inclination, if it doesn't have report, it should always have report. Like, literally is the right answer all the time. All the time. You report it. But if you don't, you are like this, watching to try to see. I had a student outcry to me, and she was terrified to go home, and I was like, sit down, you're not going to go home, and we'll figure it out. It'll be fine. Everything will be fine. And then in Texas, there's like a little bit of a loophole where you could be a foster parent. So she actually came and lived with me for several years when she was until she finished when she was in high school. So it's so important. It's so important that we take this our duty, which we don't get any extra for, and which people lose sleep over, get anxiety over, as an outcry for the children of the world so seriously. Now more than ever. Because we are via Zoom, and there are ways to identify, ascertain if a student is not behaving in the normal way, or you suspect they're in an environment or they are being abused by someone, but it takes extra vigilance. So all of the districts should be practicing that and talking to their teachers about it. But yes, that was the correct answer, and you got it. You're like so good. Okay, this is a quite kind of like a long one. Let's see. We won't read the whole shebang, but let me know. We're looking at what, objective 2? Tell me what you what was the goal in this situation?
For objective 2 was to address evaluating objective